You hear a rustle in the tall grass. You freeze in place. Something massive is hunting you, and you have no claws, no venom, and no thick armor to protect your soft skin. For 99% of human history, surviving this exact terrifying moment meant relying on the most bizarre, ingenious weapons ever created. Modern humans tend to look back at ancient ancestors as primitive brutes. People imagine cavemen clumsily smashing rocks together or swinging crude wooden clubs at random animals. People think ancient humans survived entirely by accident or blind luck. But the archaeological record reveals a completely different reality. If a time machine dropped you into the middle of the Pleistocene epoch, you would not be carrying a crude, heavy stick. You would be carrying highly engineered, aerodynamically perfect weapons of mass destruction. Your brain turned the entire natural environment into a lethal arsenal. To understand this, you must look closely at your own body. Look at your hands. Look at your soft fingernails and your flat teeth. In the wild, you are remarkably defenseless. A leopard can outrun you in a matter of seconds. A bear can crush your skull with a single casual swipe. How do you survive in a world filled with apex predators? To survive, your ancient brain had to invent a way to kill predators and prey from a very safe distance. You had to invent action at a distance. Long before human beings learned to throw a weapon, they had to learn how to manipulate stone. Imagine sitting in the dry dirt of the African savanna nearly 2 million years ago. You pick up a piece of flint. You strike it with a heavier, round rock. You are not just breaking it. You are intentionally shaping it. You are creating the Acheulean handaxe. The handaxe was the original survival multi-tool. It was a teardrop-shaped piece of stone, chipped on both sides to create an incredibly sharp, symmetrical edge. Paleoanthropologists refer to the handaxe as the longest-used tool in human history. Your ancestors used it for over 1 million years across multiple continents. You used it to slice tough roots. You used it to butcher massive, scavenged carcasses. You used it to scrape animal hides to make warm clothing to survive the freezing winters. It was the ultimate, indispensable tool for everyday prehistoric life. But creating a perfectly symmetrical handaxe requires a massive cognitive leap. It requires you to hold the precise mental image of the finished weapon in your mind before you even strike the first blow. Your brain had to imagine a geometric shape that did not exist in nature, and then physically force the raw stone to match your imagination. This was the absolute birth of true human engineering. But a handaxe still requires you to be dangerously close to your target. To truly conquer the landscape, you had to conquer the air. You had to invent the projectile. Let us reconstruct a hunt. You are stalking through a dense, ancient forest. You are extremely cold. Your muscles are burning for calories. You spot a massive wild horse in the clearing ahead. How do you kill it without getting kicked to death? You use a weapon that completely shocked modern science. In the late 1990s, archaeologist Dr. Hartmut Thieme was excavating a massive open-pit coal mine in Schöningen, Germany. What his team found deep in the earth fundamentally changed the timeline of human intelligence. Buried in the dark pit were 9 wooden spears. They are roughly 300,000 years old. They were crafted long before modern Homo sapiens even existed. They were built by an older, extinct human species called Homo heidelbergensis. These were not just sharpened sticks. They were aerodynamic masterpieces. The ancient makers carefully stripped the bark from dense spruce trees. They intentionally carved the thickest, heaviest part of the wood near the very front of the spear. This shifted the center of gravity perfectly. When researchers gave exact replicas of the Sönningen spears to modern Olympic javelin throwers, the athletes were completely stunned. The ancient spears flew with the exact same fluid dynamics and perfect balance as modern, high-tech athletic equipment. You grip the spruce spear. You pull your arm back. Your shoulder joint acts like a tightly loaded spring. You launch the spear through the air. It strikes the horse with lethal, devastating precision. You survive another week. But the climate eventually begins to change. The ice age deepens. You are no longer hunting horses in a dense, quiet forest. You are standing on a freezing, windy, open steppe. The air is bitterly cold. You are facing woolly mammoths, massive bison, and woolly rhinos. These huge animals possess incredibly thick hides. A thrown spear will simply bounce off their matted hair. You cannot get close enough to stab them without being crushed into the frozen dirt. What do you do to survive? You cheat the laws of physics. You invent the atlatl. The atlatl is a spear thrower. It looks like a simple carved piece of wood with a hook on the back end, but it is actually a devastatingly brilliant lever. You place a thin, flexible dart into the hook of the atlatl. When you prepare to strike, you do not hold the dart itself. You swing the atlatl forward. This artificially extends the length of your arm by almost 2 feet. Paleoanthropologist John Shea has spent his entire career studying the origins of human projectile technology. His extensive research demonstrates that the atlatl allowed ancient humans to store and release elastic energy with terrifying efficiency. When you snap your wrist forward, the flexible dart bends backward and then violently springs off the hook. It launches the projectile at speeds exceeding 100 miles per hour. It impacts with enough kinetic energy to punch cleanly through the thick, armored hide of an adult mammoth. Imagine the immense power you suddenly hold. You are a small, soft, fragile creature. But with a piece of carved wood, you can instantly strike with the deadly force of a modern firearm. You have effectively become the apex predator of the entire planet. You are no longer the hunted, you are the unstoppable hunter. But your ancient brain does not stop there. The animal might be too fast. It might be too dangerous to even get within 50 yards. You must invent something completely invisible and silent. You must invent chemical warfare. Look deep into the archaeological layers of Sibudu Cave in South Africa. Professor Lynn Wadley and a dedicated team of researchers spent years carefully excavating this massive rock shelter. They found tiny, meticulously carved bone arrowheads. But they also found something incredibly strange on the very tips of these weapons. They found microscopic traces of a dark, sticky residue. These ancient humans, living over 60,000 years ago, were practicing advanced chemistry. They were hunting with complex bows and poisoned arrows. Creating this poison was not a random accident. It required abstract planning. It required the complex, multi-step thinking that truly defines the modern human mind. You cannot just smear crushed berry juice on a stick. You must carefully collect highly toxic plants or the venom of deadly beetles. You must mix it with crushed bone and animal fat. You must heat it over a precise fire to create a sticky, lethal resin. Could you remember all of those exact steps while you were starving? Professor Wadley has demonstrated through experimental archaeology that making this toxic glue requires holding multiple complex steps in your working memory at the exact same time. You sit by the fire in the cave. You carefully paint the deadly resin onto your delicate bone arrowhead. The next morning, you quietly track a fast-moving antelope. You do not need to hit a major organ. You only need to break the skin. You pull the bowstring back. You release. The tiny arrow silently pricks the animal's leg. You wait. You track the animal as it slows down. The poison does all the violent, exhausting work for you. This leads to a counterintuitive twist about ancient human weapons. Modern people immediately associate weapons with war. People think of them as tools designed explicitly to kill other humans. People look at missiles, tanks, and swords and feel a deep sense of dread. But were your ancient ancestors actually constantly fighting each other? There is almost zero archaeological evidence of large-scale organized war before the invention of agriculture. In the deep past, the global human population was incredibly small. The land was vast, open, and mostly empty. If your tribe encountered another group of humans, you traded with them, you shared stories, or you simply walked away in the opposite direction. Your weapons were purely tools of survival against an overwhelmingly hostile natural world. They were equalizers against cave bears and cave lions. The greatest weapon your ancestors ever wielded was not made of wood, bone, or stone. The ultimate weapon was social cooperation. A poisoned arrow is utterly useless if you do not have a trusted tribe to help you track the dying animal for miles. An atlatl cannot bring down a mammoth unless 20 other hunters are perfectly coordinating a silent ambush in the freezing snow. Your physical weapons were simply extensions of your shared collective intelligence. Today, that ancient, hyper-targeted throwing brain is still sitting quietly inside your skull. It is the exact reason human beings are utterly obsessed with modern sports. People love baseball, basketball, darts, and bowling. People build massive stadiums and pay professional athletes millions of dollars simply to watch them throw an object with high precision. No other animal on Earth does this. A chimpanzee cannot throw a fastball over home plate. A silverback gorilla cannot shoot a three-pointer from the corner. When you crumple up a piece of paper and perfectly toss it across the office into a small plastic trash can, your brain experiences a deep, subtle rush of dopamine. You feel a tiny thrill of satisfaction. In that split second, your modern brain is executing the exact same complex calculus of distance, velocity, and trajectory that once kept your entire tribe alive. Next time you casually toss your keys to a friend, feel the fluid motion of your shoulder and your wrist. Appreciate the incredibly complex physics your body performs effortlessly. Remember the hundreds of thousands of years of terrifying survival that built that exact movement.